Okay, so we're going to jump into this story, but we're starting at the very end. A single scheduled moment that took 35 long years to finally get here. So, picture this, December 11th, 2025, 7 o'clock at night, Central Time. Now, this isn't just some appointment on the calendar, right? This is, well, it's the final punctuation mark on a legal saga that's been going on for over 3 decades. And where does it all go down? Right here. The Riverbend Maximum Security Institution in Nashville, Tennessee. This is the place where the state carries out its most, final judgment. The man at the very center of all of this, his name is Harold Wayne Nichols. He's 64 years old, and think about this for a second. He has spent more of his life on death row than he ever did as a free man. And on this night, that sentence is scheduled to be carried out. So how did we even get here? I mean, how does a sentence that was handed down in a completely different century finally arrive at this moment? Well, the way the execution itself happens is all laid out in this really strict legal procedure. See, Nichols was given a choice, lethal injection or the electric chair, but he refused to choose. And in Tennessee, that silence, that's considered a choice. It automatically defaults to lethal injection. All right, to really get a handle on the ending, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning. I'm talking 35 years ago to the brutal crime that kicked this whole decades-long story off. So the year is 1988. It's summer in Chattanooga, Tennessee. A 21-year-old university student named Karen Pulley, she's found raped and murdered in her own apartment. The person they arrest and later convict is a 27-year-old Harold Wayne Nichols. And what's really striking here is just how fast the wheels of justice seem to turn at the beginning. I mean, the crime happens in '88. By 1990, just 2 years later, Nichols is convicted on all charges: murder, rape, burglary. And get this, by the end of that same year, he's on death row. So a sentence in 1990, but the execution isn't until 2025? That 35-year gap, that's where this story gets really, really complex. I mean, what on earth could fill all that time? 35 years. And you have to understand, this wasn't just him sitting in a cell waiting. No, this was a relentless storm of legal challenges, appeals, and one postponement after another. This was a full-on, active legal battle. In fact, this was the 3rd execution date set for Nichols. The other ones got pushed back because of these intense legal challenges, specifically about Tennessee's lethal injection protocols. He was part of lawsuits that questioned, everything, from where they got the drugs to how they monitor the inmate's heart during the procedure. But in the end, every single appeal was denied. So once all the legal battles are finally done, a totally different kind of process kicks in. This is the highly structured, you could almost call it ritualistic, procedure of the execution itself. And it's kind of jarring when you see the bureaucratic details that surround an act like this. For instance, Nichols got to choose his last meal: beef brisket, deviled eggs, the whole thing. But it all had to be within the state's super strict $20 budget. It's like this tiny little ritual of choice in a process where pretty much every other choice has been stripped away. And the state's protocol, wow, it's like a methodical, almost clinical choreography. You have witnesses seated behind glass. The inmate is strapped to a gurney. Medical staff come in and secure the IV lines. Then a sequence of drugs is administered. And finally, a time of death is pronounced and officially put in the record. The whole thing is designed to be as impersonal as it can possibly be. But what does all of this highly structured act, what does it really represent? When the state carries out a sentence like this, there are 2 really starkly different ways of looking at what's actually happening. Okay, so on one side, you have supporters. For them, this is the final fulfillment of a promise, a covenant made to the victim's family. It's seen as the closest thing you can get to state-sanctioned closure for a life that was so brutally taken. But then, on the other side, you have opponents. And for them, the whole thing is a moral contradiction. They point to what they call an uncomfortable symmetry. The state using death as a tool to teach people that killing is wrong. And speaking of that idea of closure for the victim's family, there's a line from the source material that really, really stands out. It says that for them, an execution doesn't really close the chapter, it just stops any new pages from being added to it. And that really boils this whole 35-year story down to 2 fundamental, irreversible events, doesn't it? In 1988, a life was taken. In 2025, a life will be ended. Those are just two truths that exist right next to each other with no easy way to reconcile them. Which leaves us with this final kind of haunting question. Does this act actually resolve what it claims to resolve? Or does it just mark the moment that the wound stops bleeding? It's a question that just sort of hangs in the air long after that final moment has come and gone.